Today, I'm going to walk you through the major updates in the Carbon Black Cloud Splunk app version 2.0. We'll start with an overview of what's new, then cover some considerations before you upgrade, and finally, I'll give a tour of some of the highlights in the new app. The timestamps of each section are included if you want to jump ahead. You'll want to upgrade to version 2 before July 2024, as we are deactivating some of the APIs our version 1 app uses at the end of July. If you run into any issues or you aren't sure if you can upgrade by that date due to extenuating circumstances, please reach out to Carbon Black Cloud support. The biggest change in version 2 is support for the new version of the Carbon Black Cloud Alerts API. This provides significantly improved metadata, including highly requested fields like process command line and username, as well as parent process information, and a whole lot more. You can find the entire list on Developer Network under Documentation, Migration Information, Alerts Migration, and then just scroll down to Schema Changes. We've made some changes to how the Alerts Detailed dashboard works to make it really easy to get more information about an alert. In version 1, you had to configure an alert action to get enriched event or observation data in the background. Now, the dashboard will just get that information on demand when you click on an alert. Previously, you could use a custom type key for most everything the app did, except for the audit logs input and the live response alert actions. In this version, every input, action, and command can use the same custom type API key. You'll still need to select the correct permissions in the Carbon Black Cloud access level, but no more duplicate keys required unless you want to manage multiple keys to accomplish a least privileged auth model. Everything I'm going to demo today uses built-in inputs, but customers using the data forwarder for alerts will get new data mappings if you're using the Alerts v2 schema, which is now virtually identical to the Alerts API v7 schema that the built-in alerts input uses. We've also added support for the enhanced network metadata you get with XDR in an endpoint event forwarder version 1.1. On to look and feel, you'll notice improvements throughout the app in the UI and some of the administrative workflows. Finally, auth events. These were technically added in version 1.1.10, but I'm going to take credit for it in this video. Enterprise EDR customers can now bring Windows authentication events collected by Carbon Black Cloud into Splunk for reporting, detections, investigation context, etc. Let's move on to the upgrade guide. This same information is available on Developer Network in our Splunk app release notes. This is a major version bump, which means there are breaking changes. If you're fortunate enough to have a non-production instance of Splunk, we recommend you update that first to ensure that everything is working as expected. This version of the Splunk app uses the new Alerts API, version 7, which does have a different schema. That means there's new fields, there are renamed fields, and there's fields that have been removed altogether. We've mapped the new schema to our data model and Splunk's common information model as closely as we could to the previous version, as well as alias some of the new field names to the old field names. But if you've got reports, dashboards, or any other content built on those underlying fields, you should double check those against the migration guide before you upgrade. For example, if you built a search to use threat cause actor name, you should switch that to use process name. You may also see fewer alerts, since the very noisy observed alerts have been removed from the v7 API. Observed alerts have also been removed from the Carbon Black Cloud console alert page, so Splunk should actually better align with that now. In version 1, we recommended using an alert action to automatically get enriched events or process details after an alert fired. With improvements to the new alert metadata, that might not be necessary anymore. So consider saving yourself some time, some CPU, and some index license, and turn off those Splunk alert actions. The other breaking change is in the Splunk alert actions that use live response, list processes, and kill process. We switched these to use the new live response APIs that support custom key types. If you're still using these alert actions, you have two options. You can either create a brand new custom key with just live response permissions, or extend the permissions of your existing Splunk's access level and key. You can find your existing API key ID in Splunk, for example, in your alerts input. In this case, it's the one that starts with 3IK. Then go to Carbon Black Cloud, API Access, and find the one you used for Splunk. Note the access level it uses. Go to the Access Level tab, find and edit that access level, and add those permissions the documentation specifies, which you can see overlaid up here in the upper right. After you've upgraded, go into the Alert Actions tab and switch your live response alert actions to use that custom key whose access level you just updated. Finally, you can use this same custom key and access level to get audit logs. I'd recommend making this change immediately upon upgrade because your old non-custom type API key will stop working in October of 2024. And let's be honest, if you don't do it now, you're probably going to forget about it and wake up on November 1st, audit log list. So again, update the access level to include org.audits permission and update the audit log input to use that key in Splunk. You may see a little duplicate audit log data when switching API keys, but we figured this was a better experience than risking losing any audit logs. Other than that, the upgrade should be straightforward. Just install from Splunk base and all your configuration should get migrated over. All right, now we'll give a tour of the Carbon Black Cloud Splunk app 2.0. This is not intended to be a full configuration demo, so I won't go into exhaustive detail in every configuration, but I will call out what should be configured to get it working like it is in the demo. As we've seen on the Carbon Black Cloud side, I have a Splunk access level, cleverly named Splunk access level, that has most of the permissions documented in our Splunk app documentation. For example, the alerts input requires org.alerts read, the audit log input requires org.audits read, and the CBC query command for our alert details dashboard requires org.search, create, and read. I have this API key, the one that starts with 3IK, of type custom, using that Splunk access level. It's also worth noting you can now assign authorized IPs to all API keys. So if your Splunk requests will come from a static IP or an IP range, we highly recommend you include that in the API key config for extra security. I'll start in the app configuration. The first thing you'll notice is an updated look and feel, some minor updates like selecting the index from dropdowns instead of having to type it in yourself. If you add or edit a configuration, you'll get a modal instead of having to edit inline in the table, a little bit more space to work with. We default new alert inputs to all alert types. That'll get you any alert that you see in your Carbon Black Cloud Console's alert page. You can also multi-select the alert type, and there's more available, like IDS for our XDR customers. When you upgrade, you may see a type of both in your existing configs. That means both alert types that were supported by the V1 app, which were CB Analytics and watch list alerts. As mentioned earlier with the single API key, as long as the custom keys access level has those org.audit read permissions, you should be able to switch the input to use that key instead of the legacy key type. If you're an enterprise EDR customer and you haven't configured the auth events input yet, put that under consideration. Note that you will need to turn on auth event collection on a per policy basis in the Carbon Black Cloud console. Later on, I'll demo observations and alert history in the alert details dashboard, which require you pre-configure the CBC query custom command with your API key. I'll also demo the CBC device info command, so let's configure that as well. All right, with everything configured, let's run a search and show what new information is available in alerts. We'll start with a CB Analytics alert. That's the NGAV alert for endpoint standard customers. At the top here, we've got a link to the alert in the Carbon Black Cloud console, MITRE attack tactic and technique information, and device internal and external IPs. As we scroll down, there's a ton of useful process and parent process metadata, like the username, command line, and more. Now a watch list alert for enterprise EDR customers. Report tags are now included in the alert. You could use those for aggregation, metrics, or hunting. For eligible watch lists like AMSI, there's also the machine learning alert classification that can help you prioritize anomalies and weed out noise. The process and parent username fields are really handy, but if the process runs as system, it might not tell the full story. You may want to have the full login history or even just the last user to log into that endpoint. And there's two ways to get that. First, enterprise EDR customers can use auth events. Provided the device's policy has been configured to collect them and you've configured the Splunk auth events input, you can do a Splunk join to look for prior logins on that device, like you see here in the sample query. The second option is to use the CBC device info command to call the device's API, which has a field called login username, which is the last user to log into the device. I don't recommend doing this on a large query, since it hits the device's API once per Splunk result and might cause throttling. This command does need to be configured in the App Configuration Custom Commands tab and requires your dataset to have the org key and device ID. As an added benefit, there's other interesting info here too, like the last check-in time, the MAC address, and the deployment type. Now I'll go on over to the Alert Details dashboard, which is analogous to the Carbon Black Cloud Console's alert page. If you're investigating an alert, just click on the row. For deeper investigation, you can easily pivot to the console. For any alert that has observations like CV Analytics, Host-Based Firewall, and IDS, click the Observations tab. That not only fetches observations for this alert from Carbon Black Cloud, but also indexes them in your base index for future reference. Remember, you have to pre-configure the CBC query custom command for this to work. Space in this table is a little bit limited, so you can control what fields show up in the observation table. You can find the full list of observation fields on Developer Network from Documentation, Platform, Search Fields, Investigate, and then filter the rightmost column down to Observation Details. I'll add the Process command line field here so you can see some of these events have different command lines. We'll do the same for alert history. That gives you the timeline view of when the alert was created, if the determination was set, and any notes added. Well, that's what's new in the Carbon Black Cloud Splunk 2.0 app. We've got other enhancements like an inventory input, scaled live query results, and more planned for early 2024, so stay tuned for future updates. You can keep up to date with the Carbon Black Cloud ecosystem by signing up for our monthly newsletter. Just head over to developer.carbonblack.com, scroll to the bottom, hit subscribe, and your information only goes to our developer relations team, so you shouldn't expect to get any other marketing content from Carbon Black. You can also find past newsletter content in the link in the upper right if you weren't already subscribed. Thanks for watching.